There is a secret history buried in the archives of the U.S. Patent Office. It tells the story of a woman who solved a problem for NASA and another who fixed the eyes of the blind. But for decades, their names were kept out of the spotlight. The woman at number 1 became a millionaire by solving a problem everyone else ignored. 1. Sarah E. Good. You need to picture Chicago in the years after the Civil War. The city was booming, and people were flooding in from all over the country looking for a fresh start. But there was a massive problem that nobody knew how to fix. The apartments were tiny. We are talking about spaces so small that if you had a bed, you probably did not have room for a table. It was cramped and uncomfortable, and people felt like they were living in boxes. This is where Sarah E. Good enters the story. She owned a furniture store, and she heard the same complaint from her customers every single day. They were tired of choosing between having a place to sleep and having a place to eat or write. Sarah realized that the standard furniture of the time was just not working for the modern city dweller. She knew she had to invent something totally new. So she went to her workshop and started sketching. She came up with a brilliant idea for a piece of furniture that could shape-shift. By day, it was a beautiful roll-top desk with compartments for writing supplies and stationery. It looked elegant and professional, but by night, you could unfold it, and it transformed into a full-sized bed. It was the original transformer. Sarah called it the cabinet bed. When she filed for her patent in 1885, she became one of the first black women in history to get her name on a United States patent. This was a huge deal because at the time, many people did not believe a woman could be an engineer or an inventor. Sarah proved them all wrong. She did not just save space, she gave people dignity. She allowed families living in one room to feel like they had a real home. What many overlooked is that her invention is the great-grandparent of the sleeper sofa and the Murphy bed that people pay thousands of dollars for today. She saw a problem in her community and she fixed it with her own 2 hands. But while Sarah was making sure people could sleep comfortably, another woman was working on a way to feed the growing nation. 2. Judy W. Reed. Let us travel back even further to the early 1880s. In those days, making bread was not something you did with a machine. It was hard physical labor. You had to mix the heavy dough and then knead it by hand for what felt like hours. It was back-breaking work, and it was also not very sanitary. Sweat and dirt would often get into the mix because people were using their bare hands. Judy W. Reed looked at this messy process and decided there had to be a better way. She was a woman of mystery, and historians still do not know much about her early life. But we know she had a brilliant mechanical mind. She envisioned a machine that could do the hard work for you. She designed a dough kneader and roller that would mix the ingredients evenly and press the dough out perfectly every time. Her invention used a system of rollers with corrugations to mix the dough while keeping it covered and clean. It was a massive leap forward for baking technology. It meant bread could be made faster and it would be safer to eat. But here is the part that will shock you. When Judy applied for her patent in 1884, she could not write her own name. On the official patent document, she signed with a simple X. This tells us that she likely had no formal education and was probably formerly enslaved. Yet despite being denied the right to learn to read and write, she possessed the genius to engineer a complex machine. She is widely considered the first African-American woman to hold a patent. Her story is a powerful reminder that intelligence has nothing to do with school and everything to do with how you see the world. Judy made the kitchen more efficient, but our next inventor wanted to make sure you could get help when you were out in public without making a scene. 3. Miriam E. Benjamin. Imagine you are sitting in a fancy theater or a nice restaurant in the late 1800s. You are thirsty or you need help from the staff. But back then, there was no way to signal them. You had to wave your arms around or shout or clap your hands. It was rude and it disrupted the show for everyone else. It was a problem that most people just accepted as a part of life. But Miriam E. Benjamin was not most people. She was a schoolteacher living in Washington, D.C., and she valued politeness and order. She thought there had to be a more dignified way to get attention, so she invented the gong and signal chair. The name sounds a bit funny today, but the technology was groundbreaking. Here is how it worked. The chair had a small button on the side. When the person sitting down pressed the button, it would ring a quiet bell or gong and simultaneously display a red signal on the back of the chair. This allowed the attendant standing at the back of the room to see exactly who needed help without anyone saying a word. It was discreet and clever. She received her patent in 1888, but the story does not end there. Her invention caught the eye of the United States government. The House of Representatives adopted a system based on her design so that members of Congress could summon pages. And get this, the technology she pioneered eventually evolved into the flight attendant call button you see on every single airplane today. Every time you are flying at 30,000 feet and you press that button to ask for a water, you are using technology that started in the mind of a black schoolteacher in the 1800s. Miriam made sitting more civilized, but our next inventor tackled a chore that was ruining women's hands. 4. Ellen F. Eglin. In the 1880s, laundry day was the worst day of the week. Women had to scrub clothes by hand in boiling hot water and then wring them out manually. It was exhausting, and it left your hands red and raw and sore. Ellen F. Eglin was a housekeeper and a government clerk in Washington, D.C., so she knew this struggle intimately. She spent her days working, and she knew there had to be a mechanical solution. She invented a clothes wringer that was revolutionary. It used 2 wooden rollers in a frame that were turned by a crank. You would feed the wet clothes through the rollers and they would squeeze all the water out. It was fast and it saved so much physical pain. It was a $1 million idea. But here is the tragedy that breaks your heart. Ellen knew the world she was living in. She knew that racism was so severe that white women would never buy a product if they knew a black woman had invented it. She realized that her name on the patent would actually destroy the success of the machine. So in a move that is painful to think about, she sold her patent rights to a white agent. Do you want to know how much she got paid? $18. That is it. Just $18 for an invention that went on to make other people very rich. In a later interview, she famously said she sold it because she was black, and if it was known a black woman patented the invention, white ladies would not buy the wringer. It is a stark reminder of the financial violence of racism. Ellen sacrificed her legacy just to get the product out into the world. She made washing clothes easier, but once those clothes were dry, they were a wrinkled mess, which leads us to our next genius. 5. Sarah Boone. Ironing in the 1890s was a nightmare. The ironing boards of the time were just long, flat pieces of wood that you would balance on 2 chairs. This was fine if you were ironing a flat sheet or a tablecloth, but if you tried to iron a fitted dress or a man's shirt, it was a disaster. As you ironed the front, you would accidentally iron creases into the back. Sarah Boone was a dressmaker in New Haven, Connecticut. She took great pride in her work, and she was tired of her beautiful dresses getting ruined by bad ironing boards. She looked at the flat board and realized it was the wrong shape for human clothing. Humans are not flat planks of wood, so why should our ironing boards be? She designed a new type of ironing board that was curved and narrow. This shape allowed you to slide a sleeve or the waist of a dress right onto the board. It meant you could iron one side without touching the other. It was reversible so you could use both sides, and it was padded to stop the wood grain from showing up on the fabric. She got her patent in 1892. If you walk into any house in America today and open the closet, you will see an ironing board that looks almost exactly like the one Sarah Boone designed. She changed the shape of a household tool forever. She proved that sometimes you have to curve the rules to get the best result. Sarah made sure we looked sharp in our clothes, but our next inventor was focused on something even more personal. She wanted to fix the way we took care of our hair, and she was also fighting for the right to vote. 6. Lyda D. Newman. Brushing your hair sounds simple today, but back in the late 1800s, it was a different story. Hairbrushes were usually made from animal hair like boar bristles. These were soft, but they wore out quickly, and they were not strong enough to handle thick or curly hair. Plus, they were impossible to clean. Dust and dirt and oil would get trapped in the bristles, and you would just be brushing dirty hair with a dirty brush. Lyda D. Newman was a hairdresser in New York City, and she was obsessed with hygiene. She wanted a brush that was cleaner and stronger. In 1898, she patented a totally new kind of hairbrush. It was the first brush to use synthetic bristles instead of animal hair. These were durable and stiff enough to detangle any hair type. But the real wow factor was the design of the handle. It was detachable and had air chambers for ventilation. This meant you could take the brush apart and clean out all the dust and debris easily. It was a modern tool for a modern woman. Lyda was ahead of her time in understanding scalp health. But Lyda was not just looking in the mirror, she was looking at society. She was a prominent figure in the women's suffrage movement. She organized meetings and fought hard to get women the right to vote. She believed that women deserved better tools in their homes and a voice in their government. Lyda kept our hair clean, but as the seasons changed, people faced a much bigger problem than messy hair. They were freezing in their own homes, and the next woman on our list is the reason you are warm right now. 7. Alice H. Parker. Winter in New Jersey can be brutal. In the early 1900s, staying warm was a full-time job. Most homes relied on fireplaces or coal stoves in each room. You had to chop wood or haul heavy buckets of coal. It was dirty and smoky and dangerous. And the worst part was that the heat did not travel. You could be roasting in the living room and freezing in the bedroom. Alice H. Parker grew up in Morristown, New Jersey, and she was done with the cold. She was a highly educated woman, and she began designing a heating system that would change everything. She envisioned a furnace that used natural gas instead of wood or coal. At the time, many people thought gas was too dangerous to use for heating a whole house, but Alice ignored the doubters. She designed a central heating furnace with a system of air ducts. This was the game changer. The ducts allowed the warm air to be carried from the basement to every single room in the house. She even designed it so you could control the heat in different areas. She received her patent in 1919. Her design is the foundation of the central heating systems we use today. Every time you hear your furnace kick on and feel warm air blowing out of a vent, you can thank Alice Parker. She figured out how to tame fire and move it through the walls to keep us safe and warm. Alice warmed up our houses, but our next inventor wanted to heat things up in the beauty salon. She created a machine that looked like a space robot and changed the hair industry forever. 8. Marjorie Joyner. In the 1920s, having curly hair was the style everyone wanted, but getting those curls was a slow and painful process. Stylists had to use hot irons to curl one small section of hair at a time. It took hours, and customers often got burned. Marjorie Joyner was a woman who knew about efficiency. She was the first black graduate of a beauty school in Chicago, and she worked for the famous Madam C.J. Walker. One day, Marjorie was making a pot roast at home. She noticed that the pot used long, thin pins to hold the meat together and heat it from the inside out. Suddenly, a light bulb went off in her head. She realized she could use that same concept for hair. She invented the permanent wave machine. It was a large dome that lowered over the client's head. It had 16 cords connected to curlers that clamped onto the hair. It could curl an entire head of hair all at once. It reduced the time it took to get a perm from hours to just a short session. She patented the machine in 1928. It became a standard tool in salons for both black and white women. However, there is a sad twist to her success. Because she was an employee of the Walker Company, the patent rights belonged to her employer. Marjorie did not get rich from her invention, but she did become a legend in the beauty world, helping to train thousands of other stylists. Marjorie revolutionized hair, but our next inventor was focused on healing the bodies of soldiers who had sacrificed everything. 9. Bessie Blount Griffin. World War II left deep scars on the world. Thousands of soldiers returned home with terrible injuries. Many had lost their arms or the use of their hands. For these men, simple tasks like eating became impossible. They had to be fed by nurses, which made them feel helpless and took away their dignity. Bessie Blount Griffin was a physical therapist working with these veterans. She saw the look of defeat in their eyes, and she refused to let them give up. She was also a brilliant artist and inventor. She designed a device that would allow an amputee to feed themselves. It was a tube that delivered a bite of food whenever the patient bit down on it. This simple mechanism gave them control over their own meals. It was a huge step toward independence, but when she took her invention to the U.S. Veterans Administration, they were not interested. They claimed it was not necessary. Bessie was furious, but she did not stop. She took her invention to the French government instead. They saw the value immediately and used it to help their wounded soldiers. Bessie famously said that a black woman can invent something for the benefit of mankind, even if her own country is too blind to see it. She later reinvented herself as a forensic scientist, using her handwriting skills to catch criminals. Bessie fought for the dignity of soldiers, but our next inventor fought for the comfort of women. She created a product that every woman needed, but prejudice kept it off the shelves for decades. 10. Mary Beatrice Davidson Kenner. Mary Kenner was born to invent. Her father was an inventor, and she grew up tinkering with machines. In the mid-1900s, women had very few options for dealing with their monthly cycle. The products available were bulky and uncomfortable and prone to leaking. Mary decided to fix this. She invented a sanitary belt with a moisture-proof pocket. It was adjustable and comfortable, and far superior to anything else on the market. It was the kind of product that could make millions. In 1957, a company contacted her expressing huge interest. They wanted to manufacture it and sell it across the country. Mary was thrilled, but then came the meeting. The company executives arrived at her house to sign the papers. When they saw that Mary was a black woman, their attitude changed instantly. They refused to do business with her. They walked away from a guaranteed hit product simply because of the color of her skin. It took 30 years for her invention to become mainstream. By then, her patent had expired and she made no money from it. But Mary kept inventing. She created the bathroom tissue holder that allows the loose end of the roll to be easily grabbed. She holds the record for the most patents by a black woman. She never let the world's ignorance stop her creativity. Mary improved our personal care, but our next inventor was worried about safety at the front door. She lived in a rough neighborhood and decided to build her own protection. 11. Marie Van Britten Brown. Queens, New York in the 1960s could be a dangerous place. Marie Van Britten Brown was a nurse who worked long hours and often came home late at night. Her husband was an electronics technician. Marie felt unsafe when she was home alone. The crime rate was rising and the police were very slow to respond to calls in her neighborhood. She realized she needed a way to see who was at the door without actually opening it. So she and her husband built a system that was years ahead of its time. She created the first home security system. It had a motorized camera that could slide up and down the door to look through peepholes at different heights. This meant she could see a tall adult or a child. The camera sent the video signal to a television monitor inside her bedroom, but she did not stop there. She added a two-way microphone so she could talk to the person outside and a panic button that would immediately alert the neighbors or the police. She got her patent in 1969. This system is the direct ancestor of modern video doorbells like Ring and Nest. Every time you look at your phone to see who is dropping off a package, you are using Marie's invention. She took her safety into her own hands and changed the security industry forever. Marie watched the door, but our next inventor wanted to fix the eyes themselves. She used lasers to perform miracles and became a giant in the medical field. 12. Patricia E. Bath. Blindness caused by cataracts is a terrifying thing. It is like a cloud slowly covering your vision until the world goes dark. Dr. Patricia Bath was an ophthalmologist who dedicated her life to fighting blindness. She noticed that Black Americans were twice as likely to suffer from blindness as other groups, and she wanted to change that. Traditional cataract surgery was invasive and risky. Dr. Bath had an idea to use the precision of lasers. She spent years researching in Europe and the United States. In 1986, she invented the laser phacoprobe. This device used a laser beam to dissolve the cataract quickly and painlessly. It could then wash the eye clean and insert a new lens. It was a miracle of modern medicine. When she received her patent in 1988, she became the first African-American woman doctor to receive a patent for a medical invention. Her device has restored the sight of people who had been blind for decades. Imagine seeing your grandchildren for the first time after years of darkness. That is the gift Dr. Bath gave to the world. She broke barriers in medicine and showed that light could be used to heal. Dr. Bath fixed our eyes, but our next inventor used light to trick our eyes. She worked for NASA, and her invention is the reason we have 3D movies today. 13. Valerie Thomas. Valerie Thomas was always curious. As a child, she borrowed a book called The Boy's First Book on Electronics, and she read every page. She grew up to become a scientist at NASA. She managed the development of the image processing systems for the Landsat satellites, which were the first satellites to send images of Earth from space. But her coolest invention came from a science experiment she saw at a museum. She was fascinated by how a light bulb appeared to be glowing, even after it was unscrewed from the socket. It was an illusion created by concave mirrors. Valerie went back to her lab and started experimenting. In 1980, she patented the illusion transmitter. This device used mirrors to project a three-dimensional image that looked like it was floating in mid-air. It was real-life science fiction. NASA uses this technology today for satellite data analysis, but the impact goes way beyond space. Her work is the foundation for 3D television video games and modern medical imaging. Valerie Thomas proved that you can take a complex physics concept and turn it into magic. She helped us see the world in a new dimension. Valerie handled images from space, but our next genius handled the invisible signals that connect our phones. Without her, you would never know who was calling you. 14. Shirley Ann Jackson. Dr. Shirley Ann Jackson is a heavyweight in the world of science. She was the first African-American woman to earn a doctorate from MIT. That alone is a massive achievement. She went to work at Bell Labs, which was the center of the universe for communication. Technology. Her research in theoretical physics was crucial. She studied how electrons behave on the surface of liquid helium films. This sounds complicated because it is, but her discoveries laid the groundwork for some of the most important inventions of the 20th century. Her research enabled the invention of the portable fax machine, the touch-tone telephone, and fiber optic cables. But the two things you use every day are caller ID and call waiting. Before her work, if you were on the phone and someone else called you, just missed it. And you never knew who was on the other end until you picked up. Dr. Jackson's brainpower helped build the modern telecommunications network. She is currently the president of a major university and continues to be a leader in science. She connected the world in ways we take for granted. Dr. Jackson organized our phone calls, but our next inventor organized the workplace. She created software to make sure people were treated fairly. 15. Janet Emerson Bashan. Discrimination in the workplace is an ugly problem. When employees file complaints, it creates a mountain of paperwork and data. Janet Emerson Bashan realized that companies needed a better way to handle these equal employment opportunity claims. She wanted to make sure investigations were fair and efficient. She founded her own company, and with her background in computer science, she created a software called LinkLine. This was a web-based application that allowed companies to securely track and manage discrimination cases. It made the whole process transparent. In 2006, she became the first African-American woman to hold a patent for a software invention. This was a huge milestone because getting a patent for software is notoriously difficult. Janet broke through the tech ceiling and created a tool that helps ensure justice at work. She proved that code could be used to protect civil rights. Janet streamlined the office, but our next inventor streamlined the entire internet. If you have ever made a Zoom call, you are using her genius. 16. Marion R. Croak. Marion Croak is a legend in Silicon Valley. She joined AT&T back in the 80s when phone calls were still carried over copper wires. But Marion saw the future. She realized that voice data could be broken down into digital packets and sent over the internet, just like an email. She spent her career developing Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP. This is the technology that powers Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, and every other internet calling app. Marion holds over 200 patents. Let me repeat that. 200. She also invented the technology that allows people to donate money to charity by sending a text message. Remember when millions of people texted donations after natural disasters? That was Marion's invention. She made it easy to help people in crisis. She changed the fundamental way the world communicates. She took the phone out of the wall and put it into the cloud. But to navigate that cloud, you need to know where you are. And that brings us to the mathematician who built the map. 17. Gladys West. When you open Google Maps or use the navigation in your car, you are relying on a system called GPS. But GPS is not magic, it is math. Extremely complex math that calculates the exact shape of the Earth. And the person who did that math was Gladys West. She was a mathematician for the US Navy. In the 1970s and 80s, she programmed massive supercomputers to model the shape of the Earth, accounting for gravity and tides. This model, called the GeoWid, is the foundation that GPS satellites use to pinpoint your location. For decades, she had no idea her work was so important to the public. She was just doing her job in a quiet room filled with numbers. It was not until recently that she was recognized as one of the hidden figures behind GPS. Without Gladys West, you would still be using giant paper maps and getting lost on the highway. Gladys helped us find our way, but our next inventor helped us find entertainment online. She was a pioneer of internet animation. 18. Lisa Golobder. The early internet was a boring place. It was mostly just text and static pictures. Lisa Golobder helped change that. She is a computer scientist who worked on some of the most important web technologies of the 90s. She was a key player in the creation of Shockwave. If you are old enough to remember the early internet, you know that Shockwave was the technology that allowed for games and animations to run in a web browser. It made the web interactive. But she did not stop there. She also played a major role in the development of Hulu, changing the way we stream TV shows. And get this, she is largely credited with developing the technology behind the GIF. Those funny looping images you text to your friends every day are possible because of her work. Lisa Golobder made the internet fun. She brought motion and video to a static world. She is a modern tech hero who shaped the digital culture we live in. Lisa made the screen move, but our next inventor made kids move. She took a classic street game and gave it a robotic upgrade. 19. Tahira Reed Smith. Double Dutch is a classic jump rope game that requires rhythm and skill. But there is one big problem. You need two people to turn the ropes so one person can jump. Tahira Reed Smith was an engineering student at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and she loved Double Dutch. She thought, what if you want to jump alone? She invented an automatic Double Dutch machine. It uses motors to turn the ropes at a perfect rhythm, allowing a person to jump without any help. She even included a way to control the speed so beginners could learn. It started as a class project, but it turned into a patented invention that caught the world's attention. Tahira is now a professor teaching the next generation of engineers. She showed that engineering does not have to be cold and mechanical. It can be about play and culture and joy. Tahira brought fun to the playground, but our final inventor brought hope to millions of women and became the first of her kind. 20. Madam C.J. Walker. We end with the most famous name on the list, but her story is often misunderstood. Madam C.J. Walker was born Sarah Breedlove. She was the child of formerly enslaved parents, and she had a hard life. In the early 1900s, she began to suffer from severe hair loss. This was common at the time due to poor plumbing and harsh soap. She experimented with her own formulas and developed the Walker system of hair care. This included a scalp preparation lotions and iron combs. It was a treatment plan that actually worked. But Madam Walker did not just sell products, she built an empire. She trained thousands of women to be Walker agents. She gave them the tools to start their own businesses and earn their own money. This was revolutionary for Black women in the early 20th century. Madam C.J. Walker became the first female self-made millionaire in America. She used her wealth to fund scholarships, fight for civil rights, and support her community. She showed the world that a Black woman could be a titan of industry. From fold-out beds to space lasers, these 20 women prove that innovation has no gender and no race. They saw problems and fixed them even when the world tried to push them aside.